Okay, we're going to go over just how to do some of the problems on equations of a circle, worksheet number 6. Again, in this red box is the equation of a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. H and k represents the center, where the center is, and r is obviously the radius. Keep in mind a couple important things. It is x minus k and y minus k, and also the fact that you have to square both exponents. Both the x and y exponents get squared, as well as the radius squared at the end there. All right, so here we go. Write the equation of a circle. So the equation will look like the equation in the red box, given the center. That means this is h, this is k, and then of course you're given the radius. So you simply, there's no calculations here, you just shove it into this formula. You go x minus the centerpiece, so it's x minus 3 squared, plus y minus the centerpiece. Now you're going to put a negative 2 next to a negative already, so it turns into a positive 2 squared, is equal to the square root of 5 squared. Now the square root of 5 squared is really 5. So you can just replace that with the number 5. Okay, and that is it. I'm going to do number 3 here. Write the equation of the circle here. Basically, you know it's going to look something like this. Something squared plus something y squared is equal to the radius squared. First of all, you just got to look at the picture and determine where this center piece is. It looks like it's negative 2 up 1. And then the radius, you're just going to count, and I'm just counting here in blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Radius looks like it's 5. So now let's put it all together into the formula. The formula is still in that red box. X minus the center piece, which happens to be negative 2, so we'll turn it into a positive 2 squared. Y minus the center piece, which is 1, so it's going to look like negative 1 squared, plus the radius squared, 5 squared, which we can turn this into 25. And that represents r squared, radius squared. All right. Okay, now I'm going to go on the back side and try number 7 and 8. Write the equation of the circle whose center is negative 5, 2. So that's really the h value and the k value, and passes through a point. So you have the center, and then you are given one point here. This point is an x, y value. We got to write the equation. So what we need are two components. We need the center, which they give us, and we need the radius, which we don't know. So the first thing we got to do is figure out what that radius is. What you're going to use is negative 5, 2, negative 2, 3, and plug them into this formula. It says x, which is right here, negative 2, minus the h value, which is a negative 5, so I'll turn that to a positive 5 squared, plus y, which is over here, positive 3, minus the k value, which is 2. And I'll square this, and then I'm going to solve for the radius. So go ahead and solve for the radius. Just do all the calculations here, figure out what the radius is equal to, and then put everything back into the formula. Once you know the radius number, you put it back into this formula, where you just need the centerpiece, which they give you from the get-go, and then figure out the radius. So whatever this number is, you put it right there, and then put the centerpiece here, and then you would have your equation done. Don't put this point back into this formula because you would just have a bunch of numbers. You always want to have x, y to make a formula. Okay, now I'm going to do number 8 here. It says, does point x comma negative 1 lie on the circle? Here's the equation of the circle. Basically, if you have a circle graph here to the left, does your point lie on it? So does it actually hit it? Yes. Or does it float out here someplace and it'd be a no? Well, if you don't have graph paper, there is a way to solve whether this point lies on the circle. What you would simply do is take this point, which is an x value, this is an x value and a y value. You just plug in the 5 here, plug in the negative 1 for y here, plug in those numbers and see if it equals to 25. Do all the calculations and see if it equals to 25. If it says 25 is equal to 25, then you say yes, it's on the circle. If it's something like 31 is not equal to 25, then you would simply say no, it's like this point out here. It's not on the circle. Okay, so go ahead and try number 8. Okay, now I'm going to go over number 11 and 12, probably the hardest two problems of the day. It involves a process called completing the square. Um, they're going to ask you, hey, what's the center of this equation for number 11 and what's the radius? Well, if it was like number 9, you could tell where the center is. That's the h value, that's the k value, and you can tell what the radius, that's r squared. Um, but notice it's in a parentheses squared times plus parentheses squared. Our number 11 doesn't look anything like that. So our job is to do what is called completing the square. And when we're done with it, we're going to create these perfect squares for both the x value and the y value. And then we'll figure out what the radius squared is as well. So for number 11 here, it says x2 plus x8 plus y2, y4y is equal to 5, which if you'll notice right off the bat, what they do here is put the x2, x8, and then a space, y2, y4, and then a space. And there's also two spaces in the other side. What we're going to do here is figure out what is the value of this b term. This is the b term. Use that b term to help figure out the c term. If you'll recall, to figure out the c term from a while back, you take the b value, divide it by 2, and then square it. So when I do this x part here, this 8, if I divide it by 2, that's 4, and 4 squared is 16. So we're going to add 16 here. We'll add it here, and we're going to add it to the other side of the equal sign. What will just happen here is this creates a perfect square, and we'll get to that in a second. Now you look at the y values here. You've got y2, y to the 4. If I take this b value 4 and then divide it by 2 and then square that, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and squaring that is plus 4. So we're going to add 4 here. Now, what does that lead to? Well, this term here, I'm trying to erase some of the stuff here. This term here leads to a perfect square. And that perfect square would be what two numbers multiply to 16 and they add up to 8. Well, that would be the same number, 4 and 4. So instead of saying x plus 4 times x plus 4, which are the two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to 8, we just go x plus 4 squared. And we're going to repeat that process for the y values here. What two numbers multiply to 4 and add up to 4? So multiply to 4, add up to the 4, the same numbers, it's 2 and 2. So we're going to say y plus 2 squared. Then on the other side, we're just going to go 5 plus 16 plus 4, that is 25. Now you'll notice it looks like the equation of a circle here. And now we can figure out the center. The center is not positive 4, it's negative 4, comma, negative 2. The radius is not 25, it's the square root of 25, which is 5. So this is a completing the square to help get you in parentheses squared plus parentheses squared, and then you'll know the center and the radius. So try number 12.